Alright, we're filling the tank up. It's been sitting for a few weeks without a single drop and everything looks good. Sorry, I just finished filling it up, and the good news is my patch is working fine. Unfortunately, it's leaking fuel up near the top of the tank. So hey guys, today I'm going to be working on this red 924S again. I'm still waiting for the performance chip and the speedometer cable, but in the meantime I need to drop that gas tank. The last time I drove this car I actually filled it up, and although my patch is holding up well, it's now leaking from the top. So today I'm going to try and get the transmission dropped in my parts car, get the tank out, and then we're going to coat it, and then I'm going to drop the transmission in this car and get the gas tank out and install that one. So alright guys, this is one of my parts cars, and this one is also an automatic. So today I'm going to be dropping the transmission out of this car and then pulling the gas tank. We're going to make sure that it isn't rusted out, and then we'll coat the tank and we'll go ahead and put it in the other car. Alright, so the first thing I need to do here is get the car jacked up even higher, so that way I can get my transmission jack underneath here, and then I'll start unbolting everything. Alright, I have the car raised up now, and I'm using a combination of some blocks, some jack stands, and my engine crane to sort of share the load here. Nothing is really holding a lot of weight. I've got it sort of split between all these things, just so that way I have some sort of safety net. Since nothing's holding a lot of weight, nothing should fail. But if it does, then something else will just catch it, but I shouldn't have any issues out here. But what I'm thinking about doing now, before I go to the trouble to pull this transmission, is I'm thinking about cutting this line here and then using my air compressor to blow some air in it and just see if this tank pressurizes or if it has a leak. So alright, I got my compressor out now, and I'm going to be cutting this line here and pressurizing the tank. I'd hate to go to all the trouble to removing this transmission only to find out that this tank is bad. I went ahead and clamped this hose just in case when I cut it there's any fuel in there, it doesn't come spilling out all over me. But anyway, this tank looks to be in good shape. It looks better than the one that's in the other car, but I would really hate to find out only after I pulled it that it is no good. I honestly have no idea if there is any fuel in this tank. It's like a little bit. It does appear there is a little fuel in the tank here. So go ahead and drain it. So as you can see here, there is a little fuel in the tank, which is a good sign since I don't see any wet spots on the tank, so it's telling me it isn't leaking. The fuel does smell a little funny. I'm not sure if that's because it is varnished or perhaps someone put a treatment in there to keep it from collecting water. It's alright, I've got all the fuel out of the tank now, and I'm going to go ahead and pressurize it. Now on the other tank, it was kept from leaking somewhat by the undercoating. So what I need to do is put a lot of pressure in here just to make sure that if there are any cracks or any rust holes in it, I'll be able to find them. I don't hear anything leaking at all, so that is very good news. I'll go ahead and take my thumb off here. You can see just how much pressure is in there. So that is a very good sign. That tells me that this tank should be in good shape. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the transmission now and get this tank out of here. So alright guys, last night I got the tank out of this car and it's sitting in the shop. I'm going to be cleaning it out later. It does have a little bit of rust. You can see the transmission here. This is also an automatic transmission, and in some ways it's a little bit easier to remove than a manual, so I didn't have too much trouble. So alright guys, before we get started today, I want to remind you to always wear safety equipment and follow the instructions on the label. So here's the tank that I pulled out of the white car. I pressurized it before removing it just to make sure it was in good shape. And as you can see, it looks to be in pretty good condition. There is some rust down in here that I'm going to be removing using apple cider vinegar. Once I get the rust out, I'm going to go ahead and coat the inside of the tank so that way it won't rust again. For now, I just have it sitting up on some cardboard so that way nothing spills out of it. I'm not sure exactly what's down in there, if it's varnished fuel or someone put a fuel stabilizer down in there, but it really stinks. So I've got it sitting like this so that way whatever's in there will sit at that end. But I'm getting ready to dump that out, and I'm going to start working on getting the rust out of this tank. Alright, so I got 2 gallons of apple cider vinegar poured down in the tank now. Next I'm going to add some BBs so that way when I shake this around, it'll break up any loose rust. So I've been letting this tank sit for a few days, and I even put a chain down in there and I've been shaking it around every so often, but there is still a lot of crud in this tank and it just isn't coming off fast enough. I want to try and get this tank put in over the weekend, so I went and picked up some muriatic acid today, and I'm going to dump this vinegar out and we're going to try that. It's supposed to clean it a lot faster. Alright, I've got all the vinegar dumped out now, and a lot of rust came out, but I don't know if you can see down in there, but there's still a lot of rust that needs to be removed. And I figured while I had it here, I would go ahead and wash the outside of this tank. I've got the tank washed up now, so I'm going to go ahead and pour some of this down in there. This is supposed to take a lot less time. You want to keep water handy just in case you get any on your skin. This is available at most hardware stores. Alright, I sloshed it around a little bit, and I'm just going to let that sit for a while. It's already doing a better job than the vinegar, but I need to get all of that out before I can line it, so it's just going to take some time. It's alright, I let it sit overnight with the muriatic acid. You can see I've got it in another position now. I came out every now and then and shook it up, and I'm going to try and get all the gunk along this wall off here. And then there's still a lot down in there everywhere else, so I'm just going to keep at it and hopefully I'll get it all out. Alright, I'm still working on cleaning this tank out. I've been shaking it around every few hours just to make sure I'm getting all the rust out. I had it sitting up on this end for a while, and now I've got it standing up like this so that way I can try and get the rust out down here. And I just finished installing the speedometer cable on this car, and I'm getting ready to put it up on ramp so that way I can drop the transmission and get the old rusty tank out. Alright, as I mentioned, I just finished installing the speedometer cable on this car, and if you'd like to see how that was done, then I'll put a link to that video on the screen right now. As for now, I need to get this car up on ramp so that way I can get the exhaust off and the transmission out so that way I can drop the tank. So alright, I have the car up on ramps now. I'm probably going to work late into the night trying to get all this done. First of all, I need to drop the back section of the exhaust before I can drop the transmission. Once I have the transmission dropped, then I can go ahead and start draining the tank. So I have the rear section of the exhaust out now, and next I'm going to be dropping the transmission. Alright, last night I got the rear section of the exhaust out, and today I'm going to be removing this heat shield, and then me and James are going to drop the transmission. Alright, I got the heat shield out of the way, and James is now removing the axles. I think it's going to give us a little bit more room when we go to drop the trans here in a minute. Alright, you can see James underneath there unbolting the torque converter, and in order for him to do that, I have to get up here and turn the crank, and what that'll do is rotate the bolts around so that way he can access them. All right, so we got the transmission drop now. See it laying here. And now you can see the tank in there. All right, last night we got the transmission out, and today we're going to be removing the fuel tank. I'll take you underneath here and show you what it looks like with the transmission out. You can clearly see the fuel tank now. All right, we're getting ready to pull this tank, and first we got to get all the fuel out of it. All right, we have the fuel tank drained now. Next, we're going to remove this glass and this panel here. Next, we'll remove this carpet so that way we can access the filler neck. All right, we have the fuel sender unplugged now and the glass out. Next, we'll remove this panel and the carpet here. All right, we have the panel out now, and as you're removing it, there are 3 clips that you want to make sure that you don't rip out. Next, we're going to be removing this carpet here. All right, we got the carpet pulled back now. Next, we'll have to remove this sound deadening. Once you have the sound deadening pulled out of the way, you're going to find 5 Phillips head screws, and then there'll be 2 8mm nuts down here at the bottom. All right, now you can see the filler neck and what we need to disconnect here. So what we'll have to do is loosen both of these clamps here and then slide this up on the neck a little bit. And that way it'll move it out of the way of the gas tank, because as we are pulling on the gas tank, we're gonna have to slide it forward first, and this may be in the way. All right, next we're going to be dropping the tank. You can see the tank goes under this cross member here. You can see it all the way back here. So basically we're going to be removing this nut here, and that's going to release this strap. And then on this side we also have a strap. This one over here has 2 nuts on it, and we'll loosen those 2 nuts. And then the tank should drop down at an angle here, and then we'll have to wiggle it out so that way it slides out from behind this cross member here. All right, we got the straps pulled now. Next we're gonna drop the tank. All right, we just got the tank out, and something worth noting is that you'll have to remove some clips here that have some hoses connected, and you'll have to go back up top for 2 of them here. And you wanna make sure that you get this hose out of the way so that way you don't damage it. Once that's done, then again, you're just going to pull down on the gas tank and then slide it out like that. And it isn't easy because there are some pads underneath here that pretty much glue this to the cross member there, and you'll have to break all that free. All right, so here's how it looks once you have the fuel tank removed. All right, so out of curiosity, I just kind of wanted to see where the fuel could have been leaking from. And it's very hard to tell, but you can see it's wet here, and when I was at the gas station, it was dripping from around this area here. But if you follow that, you can see that there is a lot of this coating just flaking off here. And it looks like we have a crack here and a crack right there. I'm not sure if this one's all the way through, but this one does appear to be all the way through. And I think the fuel was sitting here and it caused this to flake off. And then once you filled it too much, you can see that it just kind of ran down here. So I think that's our issue there. So that's why we're going to be replacing this tank. All right, this tank isn't looking too bad. I'm going to go ahead and neutralize this acid with some baking soda. And then we're going to try and hose it out and then keep it dry so that way it doesn't flash rust. And then we're going to coat it. All right, so I let this sit for a few days with muriatic acid in there, and it worked really well. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of fuel varnish in there. So last night I went ahead and neutralized the muriatic acid and properly disposed of it. So today I have denatured alcohol in there, and hopefully that's going to get rid of all that fuel varnish. Alright, so I got the denatured alcohol out of there, and now I'm flushing it with some acetone, since that's what's recommended before you try and line the tank. And it's actually doing a better job at removing the varnish than the denatured alcohol was. So if I had to start this entire process over again, I would have started with the acetone and got all the varnish out first, and then I would have used the muriatic acid. And I think that would have made this job a lot simpler for me anyway, since there was so much varnish down in this tank. And instead of trying to run more muriatic acid through there, since you can see that I have a little bit of flash rusting, I think it's clean enough. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is use some evapor rust, and hopefully it'll get rid of all this, and then I'll be ready to coat the tank. Alright, I just finished flushing out all that evapor rust, and the tank looks pretty good. I'm not sure if you can see down in there, but we're down to bare metal for the most part. Alright, so I got all the BBs out of the tank now, and I'm just going to let this dry a while, and I'm going to try and get it coated tonight, so that way I can get it back in tomorrow. Alright, I went ahead and coated this tank and let it sit overnight, but it looks awfully thin, so I've got another can here, and I'm going to try and get a thicker layer on this. So when you're doing this, you may want to make sure that you go ahead and get 2 cans of this, because one will just only put a very thin coat in here. As for down here where the screen is, what I did was I took an old screen and cut it off, and then put a piece of tape over the end and threaded it in, so that way I didn't get any of that stuff on the threads. Alright, I got the second coat on. It's been drying for about an hour. As you can see, it looks a lot better down in there now. Alright guys, after loads of work, this tank is finally ready to go back in. I put 2 thick coats down inside. The second coat has been drying for about 2 hours now. And I also went ahead and cleaned some of this mud and dirt off the exterior here. You can see this is pretty much how the tank looked before, like this one that came out here. And I also have some new parts here. As you can see, I've got a new fuel pump strainer, a new fuel sender seal, and some new hoses, because those look to be a little dry rotted and I don't want to smell any fuel when I'm done with this. I also have some weather stripping here, and this looks similar to what the factory used on the straps that hold the tank in, and I'll be showing you how to install that. And I got 2 packs because they also use some weather stripping here that runs across the tank, so that way you don't have metal to metal contact with that cross member, and I'll be showing you how to apply that as well. Alright, so we're going to have to use a set of good hoses here. The auto parts store didn't have a hose that size, so this was the largest one they had, and we can't get it to work. So we're just going to have to go with that. And you want to be sure that you put the pads back on here. We seem to have lost one, but I have the same material here. And what I'm going to use is some of this Disc Brake Quiet here and spray it on here. And it'll work as an adhesive to hold it on there. It takes a minute, but I use the same thing over here, and you can see it's not coming off. So after a few minutes, that'll be stuck really well. I'll go ahead and replace the seal on the sender now. That's it right there. That's it. That's it. Come over here and you can see that this is now stuck. That's not going to come off now. So let me go ahead and install the strip here. And this isn't sticky, so you can just go ahead and pull this off. Alright, we have the weather stripping applied. All I did was cut it down a little bit so that way when we tighten the bolts up it isn't too thick. You just want a nice thin layer here. And then on the tank here you can see we got a nice thick layer. Once you remove this, then it looks almost like what the factory used. Alright, we have the other fuel tank in and all the padding as well. Alright, now that the tank's in, we need to go ahead and start connecting everything here. First, we've replaced this hose, so I'm going to get this old hose off here. Alright, James is working on getting the transmission back in. I now have the fuel filler neck hoses connected, and I'm getting ready to put the interior back together. Alright, we got everything put back together late last night. You can see that I got the window put back in. Also the trim and all the carpeting. I'll go around and show you guys underneath. You can see the replacement tank here and the transmission. So mostly everything's back together anyway. I went ahead and left the strainer out so that way it can dry overnight. You can see that the coating is rock hard now, so today I'm going to go ahead and put the strainer in and then connect the hose to the fuel pump, and then we'll be done here. I'll just need to fill it with fuel. Here's the new strainer, and you can also see it comes with a new seal. You'll just slide this on here, and then you'll screw it into the tank using a 17mm socket. I lube the seal just to make sure that it seals nicely. Alright, so I have the fuel line connected now, so I'm going to go ahead and get this car off the ramp so that way I can fill it up and take it for a test drive. So alright, before I took it off the ramps, I actually thought that I should put some fuel in it just so that way I can inspect everything. And so far I've got about 5 gallons in there, and I don't smell the first whiff of fuel, and everything still seems to be bone dry, so that's a good sign. I think now I'll go ahead and crank it up and get it off the ramps so that way I can fill it all the way up. Alright, so I've got about 10 gallons of fuel in here now, and everything still looks really good. I don't smell any fuel in the interior either. So I'm going to try and take this for a test drive. Alright, I just got through taking a test drive, and I decided to fill it up to see how lucky we are. I don't smell any fuel whatsoever. Nothing is leaking. And that is a strange thing for this car. I'm so used to it smelling like fuel, I don't know what to do. And even the inside smells really nice. No fuel vapors at all. So I'm really hoping that we got this fixed. Alright, so I'm heading back now. I've got the AC on now and it's still working pretty well. So I'm really hoping that this car can go home now. I don't really see too much of anything wrong. The gauge reads a little high, but I've checked the thermostat and I've checked the ground, so I think it's just the gauge itself, but we'll see. Alright, I just got back from filling it up and taking it on a short test drive. Everything still looks really good. I don't see any leaks whatsoever, and I don't smell any fuel outside or inside the car, so I'm very happy about that. And the only thing I need to check now is this temperature gauge. I should have taken this out when I had the cluster out when I was changing the speedometer cable, but I wasn't really sure that it was the gauge. I wanted to double check the thermostat, which I did, and it was fine. And I also checked the grounds, and it's still running a little bit hot. Now the fans, which operate independently of the gauge, still kick on a little past the 3rd mark, so I'm thinking that it's the gauge itself. So I have another gauge, and I'm going to try swapping it in and seeing if that's not the issue. So as you can see, I have the cluster out again, and down here I have 2 gauges. Unfortunately, I'm getting the same readings for both, so it may not be the gauge. So I've been trying to test the temp sender with the multimeter. So far everything looks pretty good, but I'm going to get up underneath the dash one more time and see if I can't clean the grounds better. You can see that I have my electronics cleaner here. I don't believe the engine is actually running that hot. It has a brand new thermostat, but we'll see how that works out. If I have to order a colder thermostat, then that may be what I have to do. It's alright, I've checked the gauges and I've checked the grounds. I can't find anything wrong with either one, so as a final Hail Mary, I'm going to swap in this 80C Waller here. It's getting dark, so I've got to do this quick. Now, when the car first came in, it was also running at the 3rd mark, and here's the thermostat that I removed. I replaced it with one similar to the one that is in my 88 924S, and that one keeps the car around the 1st and 2nd mark, so nice and cool. And I was hoping that I'd get similar results, but I may have not got the same exact one. As I understand it, these come in all different temperature ranges, and there's no markings on there to verify it, so I was hoping that it would be one like the one that's in my 88, but unfortunately doesn't look like that's the case. So I'm gonna have to dump the coolant and get this one in here and hope that this fixes it. So alright, I've got the car on the ramp now, and you can see the coolant coming out. This was my least favorite job to do on the car, but that's now been topped by changing out the fuel tank. So I'm going to get this drained and get that new thermostat in. As you can see, it's getting dark now, so I want to do that before it gets too late. So alright, I've got the fluid drained now, and you can see the thermostat down in there. And again, here's the new one that I'm putting in, and here's the tool that I'm going to be using. Let me get you guys set up on the tripod over here, and I'm going to try and fish this thing out. So this tool is actually just some bent needle nose from Harbor Freight that I think I paid $3.99 for. And then I used the Dremel to file the ends down, and I used a spare clip to make sure that I got them the right size. Once I did, then they make this so much easier to remove this snap ring down in here. It also helps to remove the distributor while doing this. Alright, once you have your tool in there, then you just simply grab the ring and pull it out. And there goes all the coolant that's in the engine. Good thing I have that catch tray down there. So there's the thermostat that was in there. Again, no markings on it, but it looks exactly like the one I have in my 88. So I was hoping that it would actually run the engine a little bit cooler like that one I have. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. So this one I know should be the correct temperature, so I'm going to go ahead and install this. Here's my clip. Make sure everything's in there nice and tight. Feel the clip go in, so I'm just gonna push around a little bit, make sure it's snapped in there. Yeah, I think it did. Alright, that feels good. I'll go ahead and put the hose back on here. So alright guys, I just got back from a test drive after changing the thermostat, and that did the trick. So you got to pay attention to what thermostat you're buying. I always try and pay attention, but apparently they gave me the wrong one anyway. And now the gauge sits firmly on the second mark as it should, and that's very relieving because it's going to be summertime soon, and I did not want to return this to the owner with it sitting at the third mark like that, because that could be potentially dangerous in this summer heat around here. So anyway, guys, tomorrow I'm going to try and take this car home, and I'm going to try and get some footage of it. Alright guys, I finally got everything finished up on this red 924S. It's no longer leaking fuel, and the temperature gauge is sitting where it's supposed to. And not to mention that the AC is still very cold inside. So today I'm going to be taking this car back to the owner, and I'm going to have someone follow me in my car. Since it's a Thursday afternoon and everybody that I know is at work, I'm just going to have my mom follow me. Alright, late last night I swapped out the thermostat, and the temperature gauge is sitting right where it should now, so I'm very happy with that. I've also been driving for a few miles now, and I don't smell any fuel odors whatsoever. So I'm going to take this car back to the owner, and I think he's going to be happy to finally see it. So I've been driving on the highway for about 5 miles now, and I thought I'd go ahead and show you what the gauges are doing. I replaced the speedometer cable, and as you can see, the needle is no longer bouncing around. Everything is working nice and smooth. I also changed the thermostat, and the temperature is now sitting exactly where I want it. I also have a full tank of fuel. There are no leaks and no fuel smells in the cabin. And here's what the oil pressure looks like. I've been driving it for a while now, and I've still got 5 bars. Alright guys, I'm almost to the owner's house, so that's just about going to do it for this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe. I upload videos like this every week. And come join us on Facebook. I'll put a link in the description below. I also want to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon, since these videos would not be possible without you. But anyway guys, that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.